Hey everybody, this is Brad from Johnson Small Engines, better known as the one-handed mechanic. If I can do it, you can too. Today we are working on a Cub Cadet 2X24. This is a two-staged, 24-inch snow thrower, and it does not run. So today we're going to try to get it to run. First thing you want to do, when you pull this out, this thing's been sitting for a long time. I put fresh gas in this. This actually had some pretty bad gas in it, and I'm not sure if you can see this or not, but inside this container, it's pretty cloudy, and there's a lot of, let's see if I can shake this up, a lot of stuff floating around the bottom there, and I don't know if that's ethanol or the white particles in there. So I took it all out of the gas tank, put some fresh fuel in there, and it still does not want to start, but we're going to go ahead and go with this, and I'll show you guys what you have to do to try to get it running. So make sure your tank has fresh gas. If you have to, you can use like a turkey baster, pull it all out, and then put the fresh stuff in. While I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and check the oil to make sure that the oil is not overfilled. And this oil looks really, really clean. He hasn't used this in a few years, and that's the problem. Okay, so the oil is right below the top dot, which is perfect. If your oil level is way high, you probably smell it, and you probably have gasoline in your oil. If you have gas in the oil, then you definitely have a carburetor problem. You're going to have to flush the engine, which basically means drain it down here. Here's the drain, 10mm wrench that'll take that off. Just tip it back, drain all the engine oil out, and then flush the tank. And then you're going to put new oil in it before you do anything. That's if your oil smells like gas. The engine has to have compression to make sure everything will work. So when you pull the pull cord out, you should feel a bump. And it gets kind of hard, and then it gets soft, and then it gets hard again. It's like a bump. You know that you have compression when you're feeling that bump. If the pull cord comes right out, just straight out, and there's no tension at all, it's real easy, I mean super easy, then you may have a different problem. But we do have a little bump, you can feel it. That means we have compression. Next, we're going to go ahead and try to start this, which would be right here at the throttle control. We're just going to put I usually use about 3/4 or half throttle. I'm going to go ahead and put the choke. Choke is already on, so you put the choke on, prime it a few times. Now, I also noticed that this primer bulb, it doesn't feel like it's not allowing air to go through the carburetor, so that's not good. Also, this is a key switch here. Basically, it has to be in. If you have this out, your engine will not start. And also down here too, where it says stop, if you have your throttle all the way in the right position, it won't start either. So that's why I usually take it all the way up to full, bring it back down a little bit, 3/4 to half. Then we go ahead and give it a couple pulls. Does not start. I'm going to go ahead and take a choke off just in case I flooded it. Okay, at this point, we got to make sure it has spark. Now, the easiest way to check spark and also to find out if you have a carburetor problem is you're going to take off your spark plug boot here, okay? And we're going to pull the spark plug out. And the spark plug socket, this is a 13/16 spark plug socket or a 13/16 deep socket will work. This thing doesn't look like it hardly ran at all. So he basically just didn't use his machine. But what we're going to do is, I have a little container with fuel in it. However, you can squirt fuel down into the throat of the engine there, through the spark plug hole. I'm going to go ahead and put like 4 squirts in there. Put the spark plug back in. Be careful, you don't want to cross thread this. Start it by hand. Then you can use your socket once it's started. Now, if it runs on the fuel, you 100% know that you have a carburetor problem and you have ignition, you have spark. And you have compression also. So we're going to go ahead and put that back on. We're going to give it a pull or two. If it starts up and runs, we know we have spark. Now it did stop. So the next thing I would do is sometimes you get lucky. Right underneath this is where the carburetor bowl is. There's 2 bolts The one on the bottom right here, the one that goes straight down, that you don't want to touch that, because once you open the bowl up and you take the bowl off, you're going to have a hard problem getting the gaskets back on. But this one on the side right here, that's a 10mm wrench. All right, so the gas is coming out. I'm just draining it. Sometimes you can just let it drain. Old gas will be it'll smell real bad. You just have to make sure that you're able to get this bolt back up in there, or the gas will just keep flowing because there's no way to shut it off. But you can drain the whole system by doing it. That's why they put that there. And they also put that there so if you want to drain your carb bowl out at the end of the season. Some people do. I have to say, I'll put Aspen 4 on the screen here. You can check it out. I will put a link in the description so you can read about it. But Aspen 4 is a great gasoline, and it won't go bad like a regular gas pump gas is through time. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and try it one more time since we just flushed the carburetor bowl. It looked pretty good because I had fresh fuel in there. But that's what you try next. We're going to go ahead and put the choke on. I'm going to prime it a couple times. And that primer bowl feels stiff, so I don't think it's priming. But the choke should still make it run. All right, so at this point, we know it runs. Guaranteed it's a carburetor problem because no gas is flowing from the gas tank through the carburetor. So I want to get this up on a bench so you guys can see it, and we're going to take this carburetor apart and rebuild it. Okay, so we have it up on a bench here, and the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take off this choke knob right here, and I always use my clip removal tool. You can use 2 pairs of screwdrivers, just pry up evenly on this, and that'll just come up. Now you do have to remember, when you put it back on, there's a big opening on this side and there's a small opening on this side. And when we get into this, I'll show you on the plastic part of the choke that you have to put it on there correctly so you don't misalign it. Then we have to take off 10mm right here. It's just 10mm socket, and you're going to need an extension. And one down here. We have 2 over on this side, right here. Now you do have to be careful, a couple things. This is a smaller bolt right there as opposed to this one here, it's around front. Okay, so you just try to put them back in the same spot. And actually, this is a longer one. So if somebody's been in here before, I'm gonna go back down to this guy here. Right down in here, there is a little slot right there that is nice. They actually thought about it. We don't have to take the handle off anymore, but you do have to line it up with that slot. And also, while we're here, there's a collar here, and there's collars over here and here. These collars can fall out. So just keep that in mind. You want to make sure that you don't lose them. I'm going to go ahead and just pull this off. You do have to go over your choke shaft right there. So you got to go up and then slide it out. Okay, so you have your ignition wire, which you don't have to take off, and then you have your primer line right here. And we're just going to pop this prime line out of the space right here. Wow, that's tight. I'm going to go ahead and take it off the carburetor right there. Sometimes you can just pull them up like so, they'll come off. If they're dry rotted, definitely replace them. And then you can just pick this up off to the side like so. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and just pull that off now, since it's easy to take that off right there. Just Phillips head screw. It just makes it easier to get to the stuff in here because you have a breather tube here that we have to take off, and then we also have to pinch the fuel line and take that off too. Okay, so I'm just gonna slide this off here, and this will pull out and it'll pop off anyway. And also we're gonna pinch the fuel line right about here. Now I did flush this tank out. If you drain your tank, there's a newer style actually has a hidden fuel filter that's right here. And I know that this is clean, but I have a video on showing this. There's a fuel filter in there. If you don't have a fuel filter inside the tank where the inlet is for the fuel, I'll put the link in the video in the description below on that little, it's a 30-second video. It shows you the fuel filter in this line. So if you have a newer version of this motor, that may help. I'm gonna go ahead and take this clamp off right here. That's really on there. Sometimes if you twist the fuel line, it'll actually loosen it up. Okay, so we have to take off these two nuts right here. This should pop this off right here. And there's also two spacers which go right here. So these spacers right here go inside. Just keep that in mind so you don't lose them. And everybody asks me, how do you get this off? All right, well, the little square, this is the choke rod itself. I do it a different way than everybody does it. They want to know how to get this out of here. All you have to do is, I have a video on how to get this out. Pull this out, and then it'll slide up and out. You can put it in your new carburetor if you're replacing a carburetor. But there's also, put a screwdriver in here and a screwdriver in this little tab here, in this hole, and then you can push the tabs in, and then this will come out. But I do it the easy way. I just pull out this choke plate real easy, slides up, and out it comes. I have a video on that. I'll also put that in the description below. Now at this point, it's stuck to the engine. So we're gonna go ahead and tap this and pull it off at the same time, like so. You have to pull this out to get this off right here. Pull the carburetor almost all the way out. It'll give you access to this rod, the governor rod here, which has to slide off the top. Okay, and then also this little teeny spring here. Be careful not to bend it. Comes right off like that. Put that to the side. Now, I know that this carburetor is going to be full of gas, so we're just going to take it off straight. Don't tip it until we get to the bench. Just going to go ahead and, usually the fuel will come out the primer, and actually this is not. All right, so we might not be, that's probably why it's not running. Nothing's getting through the carburetor. Okay, so we're going to just use a 10mm wrench to take off the bottom bowl nut. You have to remember, there is a lot of gas. That was weird. Usually it'll come out the primer line. So there was a blockage in there. What I was going to say is, remember where this is the drain. You could have drained it before we took off the carburetor, but you have to remember which way the bowl faces according to the carburetor, so you don't have this backwards when you put it back on again. So just make sure your drain is sitting right next to it's right below the primer line inlet, and then when you put the bowl back on again. Yep. Not a whole lot of, there's a little bit of crap in here. It could be dirt particles, sand or something. Really weird. Okay, so if you can see down inside here, it's actually like, it looks like there's a goo of some sort right near that main jet. That main jet is usually the culprit. It usually gets clogged. See a little bit of this that came out right there. It could be ethanol. We have ethanol in our gas. You definitely don't want to use, if you can get gas that's has no ethanol in it, great. It has just a lot of, Don't look too bad. Always make sure, I usually put this under a magnifying glass. Make sure that's clean, it's not rusty. We need to get this jet out. A 4.5 slot head from a kit that I have here works great. There's also a handheld screwdriver from Harbor Freight. One of my comments was they have a very cheap, inexpensive screwdriver. This will work. It's a 4.5 flathead. The jet only unscrews to that point right there. And the reason why it doesn't unscrew any further is because this is where the bulb bolt goes in. So you have to tap it out, and it will most of the time fall out. And then also we have the emulsion tube, which you have to remember, now this emulsion tube has a lot of crud on it. There's a lot of, it looks like goo. I would have to say that might be ethanol that's making a mess in there. And also this jet here has clogs in it. This is the main jet right here, and this main jet is usually always clogged, which you can tell that is definitely clogged. Find yourselves really thin wire, and you can, if you don't have an ultrasonic cleaner, you can just go ahead and poke the jet and just roll it around. And then you can either blow through it. If you have compressed air, that'd be great. Now, if you look through that, now this guy here is going to be a little more harder because it's bigger, and you can also use whatever you need to clean it. Roll it around. This one takes a little bit longer because there's a lot of mini holes, these holes all over that. You got to go through every one of them. And if you have any kind of a cleaner you can spray, definitely use eye protection if you're going to do this. Much better. It's opened up now. You can see through it. This one here, that's pretty much clean. Now I think we're just gonna, you have to be careful when you put any kind of spray around these, anything plastic or rubber. One, the needle right here, you can kind of see how it dried out. You can see the little ridge right here. I'm gonna take this off. Now, just remember how this goes. It has a spring attached to it. That's what keeps it on. We're gonna hold the spring in our fingers. We're gonna push it to the side, and out it comes. Do not lose this spring, it'll fall right off. Now, I'm gonna just clean that. If you guys have sensitive skin, you can see my skin drying up from the chemicals. Just be very careful. If you have to, wear gloves. Okay, as long as you don't have any major indentations in this neoprene, but you don't want to spray this with any kind of carb cleaner because you can mess up the needle valve. It can actually, it can expand, and you don't want that. But that looks good. Now, if your needle valve is bad, and you guys are always asking me, is there a carb kit? These China carburetors really don't have carb kits because they're so inexpensive. If you have time and you can order a carburetor, definitely do so. And this is the OEM carburetor for the machine. It's made by HUAYI. I have recently been able to find these online, and you can find them on Amazon and order them. This is the OEM carburetor, and this is what's supposed to be on there from the factory, so keep that in mind. Now, we do need to get into a little bit more of this. We're going to go ahead, and it looks like somebody's been in here because obviously that screw right there is not what it's supposed to look like. That's a little mangled there, but we have, this is the idle screw, and I'm going to take this out because we have to get to this jet, which is right there. Now, as you saw when I was talking, I put the spring back on this, and I cleaned up the end of it. Now, you have to pull the spring back and hold it so you can get this right in here. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but spring's got to go like that, and it's spring loaded, okay? That's all that makes this float with the float level. It's just spring loaded, which is actually nice. I like that. All right, so over to this guy here, we're going to go ahead and try to use the 4.5 flathead to unscrew this. Looks like it may work. And this is the idle screw, so remember how many threads it's out. When you put this back in, it just has to be out a little bit for the idle. You don't want to have it in too far because then your idle will not be low. But I always recommend that if it's halfway over the jet right here, this is what keeps the jet down. So when you're screwing this back in, always do it by hand when you're screwing it in, because if the jet's not seated properly, this won't go in and you can cross-thread it, so be careful. My clip tool here, it actually perfectly fits there, and then you can pop this up. All right. And then this also has a very small hole right here, and that's where you take your wire. And you're probably gonna need a very thin, a very small wire. This one here is a little big, but actually it does work. And as you can see, if it goes through, you can see the wire in that bigger hole. Okay, so that's clear right there. I'm not going to spray this with anything because it has a rubber O-ring on here, and we don't want to mess up this O-ring. I want to go ahead and take the bowl gasket off. Be careful when you take the gasket off. You don't want to break the gasket. These gaskets, they last a long time as long as they're not distorted, pulled too hard, they'll break. As you can see, all this white stuff, that might be just ethanol from the gas. You can clean this stuff off. You don't want to pull them too hard, they'll break. If they break, I'm not sure about getting parts. Like I was saying, it's cheaper to buy the carburetor than it is to, I don't think they have carb kits for many of these. Okay, so I cleaned that up a lot better. Just do what you can. We don't have anything else really in here that's rubberized that we can spray through. So there is very small, very teeny holes on the back side of here that we have to get into. Right back in there, there's 4 holes. You just see them right there. Now they're a little tricky to get into, and you're gonna need a very small, almost like I can bend this like an L, like a 90-degree bend, and then you just have to be patient. Okay, so they're all clean. I have various pieces of wire that I use. There's a couple holes here, and we're just going to go ahead and, like I said, use eye protection if you're spraying anything in here, because it will come back and get you. We're going to get those little holes right here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just clean this edge out where there was some white stuff. And that could have been ethanol. Just clean it out so when we put the gasket back in there. I'm going to go ahead and blow this out with the compressed air. If you guys don't have compressed air, you can just kind of shake it, let it sit for a couple minutes, let it dry out. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to remove these gaskets because I have the gaskets in stock. If you guys need to use your gaskets, as long as they're not ripped, go ahead and use them. Now this is basically a takeoff of a Honda, but I do use the, the gasket for this one is a Cub Cadet MTD. The gasket number is 751P11. That's an 897B. So this gasket here will be the gasket that goes to the air cleaner side, which even though there's no air cleaner, it's identical. It's going to go right there like so when we put it back together again. And then this one here, I get through Honda because Honda makes a really nice gasket. You can get them through Honda, you can get them through MTD. Trying to pull these off cleanly. And this is a pretty thick gasket. These are good gaskets, so if you can use them reuse them and they're not in bad shape, go ahead and reuse them. This is a genuine Honda gasket, and as you can see, it's pretty close to being identical. This is a Honda. This part number here, that's what's going to go just like that. I use for this one is a 1622ZH8-801. It's a Honda part. I'll put the carburetor part number down for this particular engine, and I'll show you that. Let's go ahead and get this thing back together again. So what I'm going to do is we're going to put the emulsion tube. It's nice and clean. Make sure that your flat end of the emulsion tube is going to be down at the jet. So you're going to put that in last. So I'm going like this. That just sits up in there. Your jet, yeah, obviously with the slot right there, you're going to push it in. Now we'll tap down in there because it's not going to start on those threads. Once it's down in there, we're going to use our small slot head, 4.5. And it's brass, so you don't want to wrench it down too tight. Just want to get it nice and snug. I'm going to put a little tension on it with the ratchet. Just a little bit to get it snug. Snug it down. We're going to go ahead and put the bowl gasket back in. Bowl gasket has to sit perfectly in the ridge or it won't seal, and a lot of times these actually, as you can see right here, it's not sitting right, and what I have to do is I have to stretch it a little bit, not much, because you don't want to break it. They tend to shrink up a little bit when they're off out of their groove, and as you can see now it's sitting perfectly in the groove. We're going to go ahead and put the float in, and as long as everything looks good and it's on properly, just going to go ahead and just like so. Put your pin through. And then that should sit about even like that. Has a little debris in here. I want to get this out. Bowl's clean. Make sure your drain is facing the primer line. Bowl nut. Snug it up. Have to go back to the small jet here. And sometimes I have to put a little bit of lubrication on this O-ring that goes in here to get it to sit down properly. It only goes in, you can put it in this way or the other way. I mean, it doesn't matter as long as one of the flat spots is against this flat edge here. Push it down as hard as you can. Make sure it's sitting like so. And then you put your idle screw back in. I always put them in by hand. Trust me on that one. If you don't put it in by hand, you cross thread it. It should go in pretty easily. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in halfway on the jet. And you can use a screwdriver too. Now this is that's about halfway on the jet right there. And that'll give us the idle. If it's in too far, you're going to have to unscrew that when it's on the machine. I'm going to take our new gaskets, go over to the machine. Now normally I'll just make sure that the gaskets, that's how the gasket goes. So I always make sure it goes on the carburetor correctly first, and then I just turn the carburetor around, put it on. Carburetor has to sit out so we can put the throttle linkage on there. Just like so. A little spring. Like that. We can go ahead and put the fuel line down on it while we're here. Okay, so this gasket here, just remember that the opening right there is going to go right where that hole is. So we're going to put the gasket on like so. We go ahead and put, now this right here should slide onto your vent tube for the valve cover. Now also we have these collars. Sometimes you can put the collars on before, and sometimes you have to put them on afterward. Just going to try, let's just try. See if I can slide these in there. Okay, so it was easier to put the collars in first. I've done it both ways, but that was pretty easy that way. Slide that on. Go ahead and tighten these up. Okay. Make sure that tube's in all the way. Everything looks good there. Now we do have to, before we put this cover on, that throttle had to stay at a certain spot. Okay, so we have to put this back on. That covers the inlet, so no snow will actually get right down through the carburetor. And just for everybody wondering why there is not an air cleaner, there is no air cleaners because when it snows, there is no dust, normally. Phillips head screwdriver. Okay, you go ahead and put the primer line back up into its spot right here. I actually don't like the way that's like that. It looks pinched. I'm gonna leave that off. I think the electrical line was supposed to be in there. Somebody's definitely had this off. And they definitely hold the wires and maybe the primer line, but believe it or not, I'm gonna put the electrical line there. I'm gonna leave this hang off to the side in this way. See, you don't wanna have anything towards the muffler area, the hot area, because you don't want this stuff to melt, but that's not gonna be in the way right there. So we're gonna go ahead and put this on like this. I'm gonna put that wire, instead of being on this side, I'm gonna leave the wire on this side. That's just that's how I wanna do it. Then we have to go around to the front here. And we have to make sure that the throttle goes through the little hole. You may have to move your throttle to get it through the slot right there. You just may have to move the throttle around to get through the slot. Now once I have it set in here, we have to come up here and we have to make sure that the choke rod up here will go in. So I got it right there. And then this has to go underneath the gas tank like so. Okay, so it just takes a little bit of manipulating and you get it to seat. It'll fit good. And we're gonna put the bolts back in. Don't tighten all the bolts until you get them all started. Little trick that I use, you get a little paper towel, put it on a socket, put your bolt in there, it shouldn't fall out. Line it up. Once you get it started, you can take that off. I forgot to show you guys when this was off on the carburetor, but there's a wide spot on the shaft itself, and there's a wide spot on this, and then there's a skinny spot on that shaft. You have to make sure that you line them up correctly and lock it down. All right, so we're pretty much ready. Let's go ahead and fire this up. Choke's on. Prime it. 1, 2. It's about halfway, 3/4. Give it a shot. If it doesn't start, now we're in really warm temperatures. I'm going to take choke off. Try it again. The idle seems to be idling just fine, so that screw we put in halfway is perfect. Running good. That little bit of smoke is probably just stuff that was in the combustion chambers and everything. And also, As you noticed, I took the choke off. We're in pretty warm conditions right now, so when I primed it, I probably flooded it. So just keep that in mind. If it doesn't start initially for the first couple of pulls, take the choke off, put it on, and give it a shot. And also make sure, sometimes if it floods, you can put it on fast and that'll help you. But it's running really good right now. If you guys want to stick around, I'll show you the tools that were needed today for this job. The carburetor part number is going to be for this model right here. That's going to be the model that I'm going to use to look up the carburetor part number. And then also, if this engine is a 670-WUA. Okay, so from the tools from left to right, this is a kit that I got the 4.5 slot head screwdriver out of that fits perfectly, but you can get a handheld version at Harbor Freight or whatever screwdriver, even something like this might work, but a flathead screwdriver that'll fit perfectly into the jet is what you need. You don't want to mess up the brass jet, so be careful. A pair of pliers. This is the fuel line clamp tool that I use, also found at Harbor Freight. This is plastic, it works out really well. Two 10mm sockets I was using. I used a deep socket and also a shallow. 6-inch extension, quarter-inch drive ratchet. Flashlight if needed, a glass container to put the fuel in to see what kind of, make sure you don't have anything bad inside the gas tank. Always flush the gas tank if you have any questions of old gas. A couple pieces of wire that you can get from anywhere, even a bread piece of wire, a bread twisty would work, whatever you can find. It has to go into those little orifices in the carburetor. Now I also put down here, this is the carburetor part number, and I will put a link in the description below if you want to purchase one through my link. The two gaskets I also will have in the link in the description below with the part numbers. Just I use some brake clean to clean out the carburetor. You can use carburetor cleaner. Just be careful you don't spray it on the rubber parts of the carburetor because it makes them swell and then they don't want to work. Phillips head screwdriver, slot head screwdriver, a pick to clean out some of the ethanol parts of the carburetor. This is my clip removal tool that I really like a lot. Pair of needle nose pliers. This was just electric Phillips head I used in the beginning of the video. I always use my electric ratchet, and this is Aspen 4. I will put a link in the description to just check it out. You don't have to use it, but Aspen 4 I've been using for about 5 years now. It's 92 octane, no ethanol, and it'll stay fresh in your machine, and you won't have any more carburetor problems if you start using this. Or just make sure you use non-ethanol fuel. So that's pretty much it for the parts. Pretty much wraps up for diagnosing and repairing a Cub Cadet 2X24 snow thrower that was not running. It now runs very well. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe, share my channel with your friends, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.